The sun had barely set, casting a soft orange glow over the suburban neighborhood. The quiet hum of cicadas filled the air. As I stood in the kitchen preparing dinner, my son Ethan had been unusually quiet all afternoon, retreating to his room after school, without the usual chatter about his day. I couldn't help but feel that something was off. As a mother, you learn to sense these things. I wiped my hands on a towel and made my way upstairs, the floorboards creaking under my weight. The door to Ethan's room was slightly ajar, and I could hear the faint sound of him shuffling about inside. "Ethan," I called, gently tapping on the door. "Everything okay, sweetheart?" There was a pause, then his voice muffled and hesitant. "Yeah, Mom. I'm fine." I pushed the door open just enough to peek inside. Ethan was sitting on the edge of his bed, his hands nervously fidgeting with the hem of his shirt. His eyes met mine, and for a moment, I saw something in them. A flicker of emotion that I couldn't quite place. "Are you sure?" I pressed, stepping inside. "You've been so quiet today. Did something happen at school?" Ethan shook his head, his gaze dropping to the floor. "No, it's nothing like that." I sat down beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You can tell me anything you know, that right?" He nodded, biting his lower lip. "I know, Mom. It's just complicated." I squeezed his shoulder gently. Complicated how Ethan hesitated. Then took a deep breath. "There's something I need to talk to you about. But I don't know how." I waited patiently, giving him the space to find his words. "Whatever it is, I'm here to listen." He glanced at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of anxiety and something deeper. "Mom, quick. I can't wait any longer," he blurted out, his voice cracking slightly. I frowned, taken aback by the urgency in his tone. "Wait for what, Ethan? You're scaring me." Ethan stood up abruptly, pacing back and forth across the room. "I've been holding this in for so long, and I don't know how to say it without it sounding weird." I watched him, my concern growing. "Ethan, you're my son. Nothing you say could ever make me think less of you." He stopped pacing and looked at me, his expression tortured. "Mom, I think I'm in love." I felt a lump form in my throat, my heart pounding as I anticipated the rest of his sentence. Ethan's words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. My mind raced to grasp the gravity of what he had just said. In love, my son was 17. Young, yes, but old enough to understand his feelings. Still, I had to be cautious. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my voice. "Ethan, it's normal to have feelings at your age. Who is it? Is it someone from school?" He shook his head slowly, his eyes never leaving mine. "It's not someone from school, Mom." The room seemed to close in around us, the space between us shrinking with each word he spoke. A part of me wanted to escape, to give him the privacy to deal with his emotions. But I was his mother. I needed to be here to guide him through this confusing time. "Then who?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Ethan hesitated, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. It's complicated." I placed a hand on his arm, trying to offer him some semblance of comfort. "Ethan, you can tell me anything. I'm here for you." He exhaled sharply, his shoulders sagging as if the weight of the world rested on them. "It's you, Mom," he confessed, his voice trembling. "I think I'm in love with you." Time seemed to freeze, the air was thick, almost palpable, and I could feel my heart hammering in my chest. This wasn't what I had expected. Not in a million years, my son. My flesh and blood, confessing something so profoundly complicated and inappropriate. I stood up, needing space to process this revelation. "Ethan, what you're feeling. It's not love, it's just confusion." You're young and sometimes emotions can get mixed up. He shook his head vehemently, tears swelling up in his eyes. No, Mom. It's not confusion. I felt this way for a while, and I didn't know how to tell you. I paced the room, my thoughts a whirlwind of emotions. Ethan, this isn't right. You're my son, and there are boundaries that we can't cross. It's natural to have strong feelings for a parent, because of the bond we share. But those feelings aren't romantic. Ethan looked at me, his face a portrait of agony. But what if they are? I can't help how I feel. I approached him cautiously, my mind racing to find the right words. You're going through a lot, and these feelings are just a part of growing up. They'll pass, I promise. We'll work through this together. Ethan's voice broke as he pleaded. But what if they don't pass? What if I always feel this way? I reached out, pulling him into a hug, trying to comfort him while battling my own turmoil. Ethan, you're my son and I love you. But this kind of love you're talking about, it's not something we can entertain. It's not healthy for either of us. He clung to me, sobbing quietly. I don't want to feel this way, Mom. I just do. I stroked his hair, whispering soothing words, trying to reassure him that we would navigate this storm together. My heart ached for him, for the confusion and pain he was experiencing. But I knew this was a line we couldn't cross, a love we couldn't pursue. And I had to help him see that no matter how difficult it was. As Ethan SOBs quieted, I kept holding him, feeling his body tremble against mine. His pain was palpable and it tore at my heart. I wanted to protect him from the turmoil raging inside him. But I also knew that this was something we had to confront head on. I gently pulled back, keeping my hands on his shoulders, as I looked into his tear-streaked face. Ethan, listen to me. What you're feeling is powerful and it's confusing. But it's important to understand where those feelings come from. He sniffled, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. I don't know how to stop feeling this way, Mom. I've tried, but it just gets stronger. I nodded, acknowledging his struggle. Sometimes when we're close to someone, especially a parent or a caregiver, it's easy to misinterpret those strong emotions. It's called emotional enmeshment, and it can make it feel like the love we have is something more. Ethan looked at me, searching for understanding. But it doesn't feel like that, Mom. It feels real. I sighed softly, choosing my words carefully. Feelings can be real, but that doesn't mean they're always right or healthy. You're going through a lot of changes right now, and those changes can amplify emotions. It's part of growing up, part of figuring out who you are. He dropped his gaze, his voice barely audible. But I don't want to feel this way about anyone else. Just you. I took his hand in mine, squeezing it gently. Ethan, you will one day. You'll meet someone who will love you in the way you deserve. You'll love them back. What you're feeling now is intense, but it's not the kind of love that will bring you happiness in the long run. Ethan's eyes welled up again, and I could see the internal battle waging within him. But I don't know how to move on from this. I thought for a moment, then spoke softly. It starts with understanding that these feelings, no matter how strong, need to be redirected. It's about finding healthy ways to express love and connection. Maybe talking to someone, a counselor, can help you sort through this. He stiffened slightly at the suggestion. You think I need therapy? It's not a bad thing, Ethan. I reassured him, talking to someone who understands these feelings and can help you navigate them is a sign of strength, not weakness. It's a way to heal. He nodded slowly, as if absorbing the idea. I guess it couldn't hurt. I smiled, relieved that he was open to the idea. We'll find someone together. You're not alone in this, we'll figure it out. Ethan leaned into me again, resting his head on my shoulder. I just want things to go back to normal, Mom. They will, Ethan. It'll take time, but they will. I whispered, my heart heavy with the weight of our conversation. We stayed like that for a while, the silence wrapping around us like a cocoon. I knew this was just the beginning of a long journey, but I was determined to help my son find his way back to a place of emotional stability. We would face this challenge together, one step at a time. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions, conversations, and small steps toward healing. I had arranged for Ethan to speak with a counselor, a kind and empathetic professional who specialized in adolescent development and complex emotions. To my relief, Ethan agreed to attend the sessions, though he was understandably apprehensive at first. Each evening, we would sit together after dinner, discussing anything but the heavy topic that loomed over us. We talked about his schoolwork, his favorite video games, and even movies we could watch together. It felt like a tentative return to normalcy, though I knew the undercurrents of our recent conversation were still very much present. One night, a few weeks into counseling, Ethan came to me after his session. He had a different air about him, calmer, more introspective. He sat down beside me on the couch, fiddling with a loose thread on his sleeve. Mom, can we talk? He asked, his voice steady but soft. I turned to him, giving him my full attention. Of course, Ethan. What's on your mind? He took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts. I've been thinking a lot about what we talked about before, and what I've been discussing with the counselor. I'm starting to understand more about why I felt the way I did. I nodded encouragingly. That's really good, Ethan. Understanding our feelings is the first step to managing them. He smiled faintly. Yeah, it is. I realized that a lot of what I was feeling came from this deep need for connection, especially after Dad left. You've always been my rock, the one person I could count on, and I think I confused that need for comfort with something else. Hearing him articulate his feelings with such clarity made my heart swell with pride. Ethan, that makes a lot of sense. It's completely natural to see closeness, especially when you've been through something as difficult as your dad leaving. Our bond is strong, and sometimes emotions can get tangled. He nodded, his expression thoughtful. I get that now. It's not about being in love with you the way I thought. It's about wanting to feel safe and loved. And I guess I thought that meant something different. I reached over, taking his hand in mine. You've come so far, Ethan. Recognizing these things and working through them takes so much courage. He squeezed my hand, a genuine smile lighting up his face for the first time in weeks. Thanks, Mom. I couldn't have done it without you. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the past few weeks lifting slightly. I could see the difference in him, the lightness that had been missing slowly returning. I still have a lot to work on, Ethan admitted, but I'm ready to keep going. I want to understand myself better and figure out how to have healthy relationships in the future. And I'll be here every step of the way. I assured him. You're never alone in this. He leaned back against the couch, a sense of peace settling over him. I know, Mom, and that makes all the difference. As we sat together, the evening unfolding around us, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. The path ahead wouldn't be without its challenges, but we had made it through one of the hardest conversations of our lives. Ethan was finding his footing again, and our bond was stronger for it, rooted not in confusion or misplaced feelings, but in the deep, unconditional love between a mother and her son.